back in the building room and trying to get motivated to finish a project that I started back in 2023. So it's almost been a year and I just kind of lost motivation on it. I kind of got stuck on a couple things and life got busy and I just kind of pushed it to the side, but I really would like to see it finished. And so I'm like, we can do this. I'm going to try my best to see if I can finish Icy's cave. And this is Icy my dragon, and he wants a snowy cave to kind of hang out in. And so let me kind of show you what I've done and where I'm headed with it. And then I'm going to see if I can actually get motivated and get this done. First, let me tell you about Icy the Dragon. So he's the inspiration for this entire build, and I started out with him and he took me way too long to build, but I kind of struggle with animal forms and so it takes me a minute to get it all together. His head came together really, really well, and I think he's just a handsome guy, isn't he? His neck and tail also came together pretty quickly, as well as his body, but I got stuck on his wings and his legs because I didn't want them to be super thick, but I wanted them to have movement in them. And so I had to do a little bit of compromising to make that vision kind of work, because they just kept getting thicker and thicker the stronger joint I put in or the more details I put on. But I've decided I'm happy with where they are. His wings can come out like this, and then they do this funny little thing where they open up. They're not supposed to be displayed that way, but it was really the only way that I could make the angles kind of work together the way I wanted to. Now his legs were a much bigger problem than his wings, actually, because I knew that in his cave he was going to be kind of crouching down most of the time, but when it came to, you know, being on the outside of his cave, I wanted him to be able to stand up. So I needed them to be able to get into a standing position, and oh my goodness, I mean, I got frustrated, and you know, I probably even cried a few tears in this process. I have it working, but his legs are weak. I think most of the time he doesn't exercise them, and so they are a little bit weak, and they can rotate out and stand up, but it takes a little bit of delicate work to make him where he'll stand up straight and not kind of just collapse and fall over. I can get him to stand up, so when it's time I can pose him and take, you know, great pictures and stuff, but he's probably not the kind of dragon that you could play with a whole bunch, and I think he would be frustrating in the long run with that. But for my purposes with this piece, it's going to work just fine. Now that Icy is finally at a point where I can say that he's good enough for the project, I started working on the base, and I wanted something that was kind of different shaped. I didn't want to just work off of just a square base plate like I do sometimes. So I tried to build my own base plate, and for the most part it actually worked really well. The only thing that I'm unhappy with is that I went to my normal fallback and just stacked two plates on top of each other to create the base. And I know after building so many sets this past year that there are much better ways that Lego is doing this kind of base building, and I didn't employ any of those techniques, partially because it's very unfamiliar to me. I'm not sure how to do it, and partially because I wanted to keep the base kind of thin. So I think in this instance it's okay. I'm gonna leave it and then work on my skill level a little bit later on. The vision was a rock island that was out somewhere up in the cold, surrounded by an ocean, and it had a cave on it that the dragon kind of, you know, hung out in. And so that's kind of where I was going when I started to build this. And I thought about surrounding it completely with water. That was going to be a little bit too much. I think it was just going to get bigger and bigger. And so I did this illusion of water that's kind of coming out. I'm not 100% convinced that it gives the illusion that water would go all the way around the island, but I decided to stop fiddling with it after I tried, and I thought, you know what, this is going to be okay. Now the white spots in it are actually where I'm going to build up some, you know, floating ice shelves or, you know, little icebergs that I'm thinking maybe an explorer can kind of find his way over and discover Icy our dragon. Then it came down to the actual cave, and this is actually where I kind of got stuck because it was getting a little bit complicated and I just wasn't seeing my vision exactly like what I wanted to. And so I think I just needed a little space from the project. The one thing that was most important that I actually worked into this was ice crystals. And I wanted them to be blue, and I actually ordered in a whole bunch of these from Bricklink, which was wonderful. And I wanted to let them glow. And I have worked with putting fairy lights into builds before. And I know that's probably like, I don't know, illegal building or something, but I love doing it because there is something about fairy lights working into an actual build that it just really inspires me. It's really beautiful, especially if you can light it up at night and use it as a display piece. So I ordered some blue fairy lights, and let me see if I can hook this up for you so you can kind of see what it looks like. It's kind of hard. I'm not quite happy with how it looks when all the studio lights are on, but maybe you can get the idea. I have built a layer underneath of this top ground layer that you see that actually houses all of the wires for the fairy lights so that I can kind of hide it, and then all you're actually going to see is little lights coming out. Now I know that I'm going to have columns that are going to be built up that's going to support the top to the cave, and I've integrated in a lot of blue crystals into that too. So I just want it to be where the cave will be mostly covered, but when you kind of look at it from this angle and you look inside, it's just going to have all of these glowing crystals in it. Now whether I can pull it off or not is yet to be determined. When I started working with my crystals, I found out very quickly that it actually needed 2 little lights in here to actually really make the crystal glow properly, or at the color, brightness that I wanted it to. I also found something really odd. When I just put the crystal on top of it, it didn't glow quite as well. But if I was to take this clear 1x2 plate and then put the crystal on one end, somehow it's almost like it amplified or enhanced the light, and it kind of helped it glow more. Now, once I've got them all positioned, I then kind of build up a rock structure around the base of it so that you don't see that clear plate, but it really did help enhancing that light. So I've been working that into it as well. And all of these tall things are for the additional columns that are going to be built in. In addition to the columns, the outer walls of the cave are also going to have the crystals built into it as well. And so there's so much work to do just with the lighting and the crystals themselves, but I think that in the long run, that's what's really going to make this set be extra super special. I have so much work left to do on this build. I am still intimidated with it because the outside of the cave has to be covered in, mountains of snow and rock structures, and then the inside has all of that work to do on it. I also have to be able to kind of nestle him inside of it, and I think I kind of left a good spot for him to be able to be. I'm going to have a very big opening here so that you can look in and see him, and then maybe a smaller opening over here so it's kind of like a sneaky little entrance that somebody smaller could sneak into. I don't think our dragon could maybe fit through it, but we will see. So the real question is, will I actually be able to pull this off? And I don't think I can answer that question yet, but I am sure going to try. So make sure that you subscribe and you keep checking the channel because I'll be bringing you updates as I go along on this project. Hopefully it will turn into a gorgeous masterpiece, but if not, it will at least be something that I tried really hard to make happen. If you have any ideas on how I can make this build even more special, then comment below and let me know, and I'll see if I can try to integrate them in. So if you've never worked with fairy lights and you think your cat might be naughty like mine, you're going to want to cover those up, when you're not working on it so that you don't get it damaged, because once they snap through it, you're going to have to buy a whole new strand of lights.